calls it a strike to count on Taylor. Reyes fires, swing and a drive, deep left field. It's his way back. Walk the ball. Chris Taylor.
What's up, everybody? Welcome into DodgerHeads Live, presented by DodgerBlue.com, part of the Blue Wire Podcast Network. My name is Jeff Spiegel, joined tonight by Blake Williams. We appreciate the folks on YouTube, on Facebook, on Twitter joining us live. We appreciate the folks watching this after the fact or listening to it as part of our podcast, whether that's on Apple, Google, Spotify. We appreciate you all. Blake, thank you for being here. We've got 4 Dodger games in the book. We got lots to talk about. I'll just start with a question for you. You got to go to the game. I believe it was Saturday night, your first time transitioning from spring training to Dodger Stadium. How did it feel to be back?
It was Friday night, but yeah, it was good. It was nice to be back out for a game that matters, and didn't see them win, which was unfortunate because the night before and the night after they won, so I just missed it, but it is what it is. Yeah,
I hear you got to see the drone show. Can we get a quick? I mean, you go to Dodger Blue 1958 on YouTube. The drone show is posted. Would you say like overwhelming, underwhelming, about what you expected?
I think it was better than what I expected. I know a lot of fans weren't happy with it because they invited everyone onto the field, and then if you were on the field, you couldn't see the drones from what everyone was saying. I was watching in the press box, so I had a nice view. I thought it was pretty cool though. They were showing pictures of like Kershaw up there, and they had all the logos for MLB and the Dodgers in opening weekend. And then like they would show Jackie Robinson and play a call of him stealing home, or Kershaw with his hands up throwing his no-hitter. So I just thought it was cool. It was different than fireworks. I'm sure people around the neighborhood liked it more without hearing the fireworks, and all their pets probably appreciated it a lot. But if anyone plans to go in the future, I'd say stay in your seat or try and move up.
There you go. There you go. Expert analysis there from Blake. Well, as far as the Dodgers go, Blake, they split 4 games with the Diamondbacks. We're going to dive into specifically Sunday's game here in just a moment. We'll talk about 5 reactions, potential overreactions to the 4 games we saw. I'm just curious, before we get into it, 4 games in, has anything changed for you? I mean, I know it's a small sample size, so we're not going to go crazy on this stuff, but we'll get to some things that feel like maybe they're better than we thought they were going to be. Like, they're 2-2. Do you feel worse about this team than you did 4 or 5 days ago?
I mean, it's about what I expected. We've seen them like slug for 2 games and then go quiet for 2 games. And they're relying on a lot of players we had concerns about to kind of help carry their offense after the big 3. So that's kind of expected when you have so many guys with question marks. So I don't think anything was a real shock. And I don't think it's early enough to like make any big changes with your predictions or anything. So I'm going to try and stay pretty level-headed about them right now, and it's just what I expected.
Well, if you saw my bold predictions, Blake, you might want to change a few of those if you were me, based on some of the conversations we're going to have. But we'll get into that. So let's do this. Like I said, we're going to get to some reflections on kind of the first weekend as a whole. You can tell me if I'm overreacting or not. But I want to start, as we record this on Sunday night, with the game that we got to see earlier this afternoon. The Dodgers lose 2-1. They score in the first inning on a Will Smith home run off Zach Davies, and then end up getting shut out for the final 8. They give up a run in the 5th, and then a run in the 9th to lose. But the story, in my opinion, Blake, was Dave Roberts. And what happened in the 9th inning on the pitching side, as well as on the offensive side, I think is what I want to talk about. And part of what I'll say sort of in defense ahead of time of myself is I like to think of myself as somebody who's pretty fair, as somebody's balanced. If I'm wrong, I will say it. I had an opinion about Trace Thompson that looks very stupid 4 days later, and I took the L on it immediately. I never want to just like pile on somebody just to prove something. Last week, for example, I predicted that Dave Roberts, one of my bold predictions, would be manager of the year in the National League because I thought people were down on the Dodgers. They would be fine and he would be recognized. But I do think historically I've been a supporter of him. I think he's way more positive for the Dodgers than he is negative. And yet I watch a game like today's game, and we can get into it's game 4, all that. But I struggle greatly with how the 9th inning was handled. And I know a lot of people's critique of Dave Roberts is bullpen usage. And the problem with trying to defend Dave Roberts is days like today. So if you missed it or weren't paying close enough attention, here's kind of what happened. And we can we can get into the who cares mentality. It's game 4, yada, yada. But here's the scenario. Tie game 1-1, 9th inning. The Diamondbacks have their 2, 3, and 4 hitters due up in the top of the 9th. Caleb Ferguson pitched the 7th. Evan Phillips pitched the 8th. Brusdar Graterol comes in for the 9th. I'm perfectly fine with all of this. Like, we can make an argument. Should Evan Phillips have been there for the 9th? Whatever. I'm fine. Graterol's a guy I trust. He's a back-end guy. I have no issue with Graterol coming in to pitch with this group. Marte leads off the inning with a double. Gurriel singles to right. Marte gets thrown out at home. Great play by Mookie Betts. Great tag by Will Smith. That's the first out of the inning. The third batter singles. So just for a recap, Graterol at this point in a tie game in the 9th inning has faced 3 batters, and it was a double, a single, and a single to the 2, 3, and 4 hitter. Now, the game is still tied. Fortunately, there's 1 out. At this point, Graterol has faced the minimum. He has faced the 3-batter minimum, and yet there's nobody warming up for the Dodgers in the bullpen. As a side note, it's worth noting before the game, Dave Roberts said that every reliever in the bullpen was available aside from Andre Jackson because Andre Jackson had pitched 3 innings the night before. So there's nobody warming. The next batter, it's worth, okay, one other side note here. So 2, 3, and 4 have gone. And 5, 6, and 7 are lefty, lefty, lefty. For his career, Fabian Ardaya pointed this out. For his career, Brusdar Graterol has allowed an 850 OPS against lefties. So with 3 consecutive lefties, 5, 6, and 7 hitters coming up in a tie game in the 9th, and runners now at first and second, this is where we're at. The next batter grounds out. So now we've got first and third, 2 outs. Nobody warming up for the Dodgers. Next guy up, bunt single. Graterol can't field it. 2-1. The Dodgers lose. Can you help me here? In a tie game in the 9th with a rested bullpen, Blake, how does Graterol give up hit, 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 and the Dodgers don't even have someone warming with a lefty, a lefty, a lefty do up? Like, I want to be fair. I want to not overreact and be negative guy that comes on here and just piles on. This makes no sense, and ultimately the Dodgers end up losing this game 2-1 as a result.
Yeah, I definitely agree. It makes no sense, and it's poor bullpen management. But in credit to Dave, he's also working with Mark Pryor, Danny Lehman, and Bob Guerin to make these decisions. And people love to give Pryor and Lehman praise for what they do with the pitchers. So I do think there's some more blame that needs to go around. You can't just throw all the blame on Dave because he's working with people. It's a group effort. Ultimately, it is up to Dave to make those decisions, and it was poor management. But at the same time, every manager in baseball is going to have poor management decisions. Yeah. There's not a single manager who's going to make every call perfectly, who's going to do the right things at the same time. I think Dave's biggest flaw is he's almost too much of a player's manager. He wants to protect his players and he doesn't want to upset anyone too much, and he wants to give everyone their chance to prove themselves, which when you're in a competitive division, that can be tough to do. It's easier to do when they're going to win 110 games and the next closest team's going to win 90, but that's just his management style, and it's something we have to live with. It has some positives to it, and it has some negatives, and unfortunately, we saw the negative today.
Yeah, I think it's a great point. First of all, that we pile on to Dave Roberts, but Pryor, Lehman are probably involved. I mean, a lot of times when it's a lineup or something, you could go up to Friedman. I don't think Andrew Friedman's involved in how they deploy a bullpen in a game like this, but it's, again, I want to be I'm not saying Dave Roberts should be fired or anything remotely close to that. I guess the other thing I wanted to ask you about, Blake, is when I was on social media kind of complaining about this in real time, saying like, what are we doing here? What are we doing here? Again, 3 straight hits in a tie game in the 9th inning. And oh, by the way, the Dodgers had 7, 8, 9 coming up on their side. So we'll get to that in here just a moment. But I just don't understand kind of how that plays out. Now, the response that I got on social media was, it's just game 4. Who cares? Like, why are we freaking out? It's just game 4. And I'm curious, before I give my thoughts on that, Blake, when somebody says, oh, it's just game 4, like, why are we overreacting? Who cares? Do you fall into that camp? Like, I can't, I'm not there, but I'm curious to hear where you're at before I share my thoughts.
In previous years, I would have been there more when they were projected to win the division by 20 plus games, and it was just kind of a given. But now that you're competing essentially with the Padres, one game could be a difference. So I think there should be more urgency to win these games. Now, in the regular season, you can't play to win every game. You have to keep your bullpen managed well and not overuse them and think about the days ahead. But like you're saying, the whole bullpen was rested and available except for Andre Jackson, and they have 2 games left before an off day, and they have Julio lined up and Grove. So they might need a bullpen game tomorrow, but relievers can go 2 days in a row. So yeah. I don't think that's a real excuse. So I wouldn't say it's like the end all, like it's the most important game you have to win or weighted as heavily as much as games near the end. But I do think it has more importance now than it has in previous years.
Totally. I mean, and I think that's a great point. And keep in mind, 2021, the Dodgers lost the division to the San Francisco Giants by how many games? One game. And so it sort of irks me a little bit when I was looking at this and people are like, who cares? And I'm like, when are we supposed to care? Like this, I was told for spring training, you shouldn't care and don't pay attention. Okay, that's fine. But like now it's game 4. Like people are paying money to go to these games. Like we're here talking about them. People are writing about them. These are the games that are supposed to count. If game 4 doesn't count, does 19 matter? Like is 83 the number when we're supposed to start caring? I don't get that type of thinking. And I don't think that's what Dave Roberts is saying. Like, oh, well, let's just try some things out and see what happens. I tend to think like you, he's a player's manager. He wants to give his guy a shot. Now, if he had a guy warming and stayed with Gratterall, that would be slightly more defensible because at least the thought had crossed his mind to not just let Gratterall either live or die out there. But that was the toughest part to me is I was just like, there wasn't even a backup option. There wasn't even a mound visit at any point during this inning. It was just Gratterall who, maybe this is something we're going to get to a little bit later when we talk about the bullpen. But the other piece of this is was Gratterall the guy there? Like Yency Almonte is higher on my power rankings than Gratterall. And so I'm fine with going Gratterall there, but I've got to have a guy like Yency Almonte or even Alex Vesia, who is really bad. If you're still confident in him, he was bad earlier, but like you've got to have somebody warning. And I just couldn't get past it. So that was go ahead real quick.
Yeah, I do want to say at some point it's also on the players though too. Like
Yep.
it's easy to blame Dave, but there were a lot of people who wanted Gratterall in the closer role, and
Right.
Dave gave him that shot and it didn't work out. So at some point you have to blame the players. The offense put up 1 run. Like you can't win games consistently scoring 1 run. Of course, we are going to want better management and correct decisions to be made all the time,
Yeah.
but that's not possible, and the players do need to perform.
Yeah, it's a great point. It's a great point. Absolutely. It's on the players. And we're going to get to the bullpen. By the way, that's one of our potential overreactions there. Smaller, less impactful piece here. We get to the bottom of the 9th inning. The Dodgers have the 7, 8, 9 hitters in a 1-run game. There was a left-hander on the mound for the Diamondbacks, James Outman, due to lead off in that inning. James Outman had come to the plate 3 times. He was 0 for 1 with a walk and a hit by pitch in that game. And Austin Barnes comes up to pinch hit for James Outman. Blake, this is less impactful. This is less of a straight line between the Dodgers losing and this decision. And yet, maybe it's just because it came after the pitching fiasco. Maybe it's because I like James Outman so much. But this one, in some ways, felt less defensible than the pitching matchup.
Yeah, I would like to see them give Outman more of a chance to see if he can hit lefties before they're just putting him right into a platoon role. Austin Barnes is probably better than you think he is, and I think he's better than most fans generally think. He's not the person I'd want up necessarily in that situation when 1 run can tie it. Outman has the power that Barnes doesn't, but I'm sure they saw something with the swing path and the pitch. So just something they liked there that made them decide to do it. They're not just doing it because lefty righty, I don't think. They have data that's backing up their decisions. Now, if you agree that's the right thing, that's a different story, but they had their reasons.
Yeah. We'll disagree on Austin Barnes. I think he hit 180 against lefties last season, I believe was the number. James Outman obviously was in the minors. He had an OPS of, I believe, over 800 against left-handed pitching. So that I'm not drawing a straight line between those two because I'm not saying Outman would have done anything differently. It was a tough spot there. But that's just the hard part for me was I'm looking at it. I'm like, okay, you just make the Gratterall decision. And now we're looking at this and Austin Barnes is going to come pinch hit. Like a guy who for his career is an 8% below average offensive player. And even if you tell me he's slightly better against lefties than he is against righties, like Austin Barnes he's less likely to draw a walk than James Outman. I think just like, maybe I'm wrong on that, but it feels like Outman is much more willing to draw a walk than Austin Barnes is. Outman has power, Barnes does not. So even if Barnes gets a single, then you're setting the table for Chris Taylor and Miguel Rojas, who eventually gets pinch hit for Jason Hayward, and hope that you can turn over the lineup. But so again, I want to be clear. That one is a far less impactful decision, but it felt like to me, just sort of the cherry on top of, man, this is just a rough sequence. And again, as a Dave Roberts defender, a guy who wants to be positive about Dave Roberts and acknowledge all of the positive things that I think he brings to the table. That was a tough one. That was a tough one for me. So there you go. Just looking through the comments here real quick. You like this one. Austin Barnes, Blake Snell's daddy, not Daniel Starkin, says that one. That is not Daniel Starkin, just to be clear. Michael, not happy about the Outman substitution either. Anna, yeah, even if Dave made the right decisions, we still only scored 1 run in this game, which I think is a fair one as well. Valeri says, got to beat the bums. I know it's an old baseball adage, but 500 baseball isn't exciting or fun. Neither is losing 2-1 twice in a 3-day stretch, as you would know. THP says the Dodgers scored 1 run off Zach Davies. I think that's a fair point. Zach Davies kind of owns the Dodgers, though.
Yeah, I think he always has throughout his career. He's just one of those guys.
Yeah, it's like, hey, this guy's going to top out at 87 miles an hour. And for whatever reason, they just can't touch him. I loved, like, in the middle of the game, Clayton Kershaw was doing some, like, a sort of analysis. And he's talking about, like, Will Smith. And he's like, I hope I never have to face this guy. Like, I don't know what the weakness is. And then Zach Davies strikes him out, like, on just some awful looking changeup. It's like, well, okay, there you go. Yeah, David says, same reaction here. Why is Barnes batting for Outman? So there we go. Okay. Let's shift gears. We're going to move away from Sunday. We're going to take a deep breath and say, all right, we're moved past this. The Dodgers are 2-2. It's not where we want to be. But as they prepare for a trip to Colorado coming to town and then Arizona coming back to town, Blake, I want to get to 5 storylines kind of coming out of the weekend. And I'll make a statement. This might be a statement I agree with. It might not be a statement I agree with, but I think it's a statement that is at least defensible one way or the other. And I want you to tell me, am I overreacting? If somebody were to say this to you, is this an overreaction to what you have seen? Or are you like, you know what? I'm actually buying that. So let's start with the first one. And I think for me, this is the biggest headline coming out of the weekend, at least this topic. The Dodgers starting pitching, Blake, is not good. It's great, would be the first reaction to this weekend. I'll give you the numbers. Julio Urias, 6 innings, 4 hits, 2 earned, no walks, 6 strikeouts. Little did we know at the time that was the worst start we were going to see from Dodgers starting pitching over the weekend. Dustin May, 7 innings, 3 hits, no earned, 1 walk, 4 strikeouts. Clayton Kershaw, 6 innings, 4 hits, 1 earned, no walks, 9 strikeouts. And then Noah Syndergaard, just as everybody expected, 6 innings, 4 hits, 1 earned, no walks, 6 strikeouts. You add all that up, we're talking about 15 hits allowed. All 4 guys throw 6+ innings. May goes 7, 4 total earned runs, just 1 walk, I think, for the whole Dodgers pitching staff, including the bullpen, and 25 strikeouts for the Dodgers. Do you agree or disagree after 4 days that this starting pitching staff might not just be good, but might actually be great?
I want to call it an overreaction and not an overreaction because to start with, they were facing the Diamondbacks. No one expected much from them. So I wouldn't change your projections for what they did based on that sample. But I also think most of us thought they were going to be very good to begin with to great. So I don't know if you can adjust that based on the Diamondbacks. We already thought they were going to be good. So how much can you really change from there? But they were very impressive. And even though it is the Diamondbacks, they're still major league hitters. They drive nice cars too. I think it's a quote Mookie said before. So yeah, it was impressive, but I wouldn't change how I viewed them before based off it.
So I look at these 4. Urias and Kershaw are kind of what I expected. I would even say somehow Julio was slightly disappointing just because of the way that game felt, even if you look at the box score and it was good. Clayton Kershaw was fantastic, but that was not surprising to me. I'm curious for you, which of these 2 is a bigger storyline? Is it Dustin May going 7 innings for the first time in his career and being pretty dominant? The strikeout numbers still not where you want them to be, but really, really good. Or was it Noah Syndergaard looking really freaking good today? And I know it's the Diamondbacks, but we're coming off of a spring where it was this guy might be a huge bust. And instead he comes out. The changeup was absolutely nasty. He was throwing everything for strikes. And I mentioned to Daniel when we did bold predictions, and I said, hey, the thing about Syndergaard is he's striking a decent number of guys out and he's not walking anybody. That was my one concern with labeling him a bust. So I'm curious for you. May dominating or Syndergaard maybe impressing more than you expected? Which one is maybe more of a headline for you coming out of the weekend?
I think Syndergaard was more surprising. We've talked about May before. He has ace potential. We all know he has some of the best stuff in baseball, if not the best, and he's just really good. So Syndergaard coming out and dominating was good to see. And he's been a good pitcher for a few years now when he's been healthy, at least.
Yeah.
He hasn't been at that ace level, but he looked really good. His control was good. His stuff looked good. He wasn't hitting 100 like he said he was hoping to do originally, but
Yeah.
it just looked good. His stuff had movement and he controlled it well.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, Dustin May is a guy I was high on. I had a lot of questions. And again, say what you will about the Diamondbacks. The thing with Syndergaard was, as you said, the stuff checked out. I mean, Kershaw talked about the fact that how hard he's throwing his slider. The fastball was getting swing and miss, even though it was 93, 94. But the changeup looked like an absolute weapon. And I kind of, Daniel and I, as we were talking it out, I mentioned, hey, the Dodgers have said they didn't care about his velocity. Now, was that just posturing because they were protecting themselves against the possibility the velo never came back? Maybe. Or were the Dodgers hoping that once Syndergaard didn't regain high 90s velocity, that he would actually maybe morph into the type of pitcher they actually envisioned, which is a guy who's just throwing strikes and not trying to throw everything past people and relying more on a changeup or more on a slider than maybe he would if he felt like he could just throw 98 whenever he needed it. Like, do you think there's any truth to that? Again, I'm not trying to overreact to one game, but I was just really impressed by what I saw today.
I think there's truth to it because we saw what they did with Tyler Anderson last year. He's not a guy who throws hard, and they made him rely on his changeup as his primary pitch. So if they're going to have Syndergaard pitch like Tyler Anderson did, if they see similar profiles between them, then yeah, he doesn't need the velocity. If he gets it back, then you get another potential ace in your rotation. And if not, he could just be really good, and that's what you need in your 3 or 4 spot in your pitching staff. So I kind of believe it. They probably had some hope he could get it back. Maybe not. I mean, Mark Pryor, he's done miracles for that Twitter video.
Yeah.
So there's probably some hope, but I don't think they were betting on his velocity coming back.
Yeah, I like what Anna says. If our number 4 or 5 starter looks like that, I'll be happy. I think we'd all agree on that. And I mean, it doesn't even have to look as good as it did for us to be happy, I think, with that position. All right. Reaction number 2. Again, these are 5 over question mark reactions from the weekend. You tell me if I'm overreacting. And Blake, of the 5, I am positive this one will be your favorite reaction. I'm not sure you're ready to go there quite yet, but I think you're going to like it either way. My second reaction is Miguel Vargas might lead the Dodgers in on-base percentage. Vargas so far has a 769 on-base percentage. He has come to the plate 13 times. He has walked 8 of them, and he's 2 for 5 on attempts in which he actually swings the bat and puts it in play. A 769 on-base percentage. He has a healthy lead in the category. Blake, is Miguel Vargas going to lead the Dodgers in on-base percentage?
I'm gonna say no, and that's nothing to do with Miguel Vargas. If anyone who knows me knows I've been really high on him since at least 2021. He's been a guy I'm really excited to see, and I think he's going to be a really good player. But you have Mookie Betts, Freddie Freeman, and Will Smith in your lineup, and when you have 3 superstars up there, it's hard to put a rookie leading the team in on-base percentage. But it is very encouraging what he's been able to do.
I'm curious. I mean, off the top of your head, if you had to guess which Dodger led the team in on base percentage last year, do you know who it was?
Was it Freeman?
I was gonna try and look it up. This is not gonna be. This is like awful stuff. Yeah. I mean, I'm just like I'm with you. Those are the 3 guys that I would initially think of as far as on base percentage goes, as the guys at the top of the lineup. But it just feels like who knows, like. Is it possible that I mean, like, do you have him us outside of those 3 guys? Like, it looks like okay. Freddie Freeman he had a 407 on base percentage last year. Mookie was actually 340. Will Smith was 343. Justin Turner was 350. So 407 was Freddie Freeman last year. I mean, like, do you think a 390 on base percentage is in play for Vargas?
I still would go a little lower just on the safe side. I mean, if he goes to 390 on base, he's probably winning Rookie of the Year. He could do it. Will he do it? I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I'd probably 340 seems fair, and I'd be happy with that. Anything higher, I'm going to be thrilled with, but
yeah,
he has the ability to.
I mean, I'm curious on that. Like, what's a batting average from Vargas? Like, is 270 the line? Like, or would you be happy if it was like 255?
I think he's around a 270 hitter. I think some scouts have said like 290 in his prime.
Yeah.
He has really good bat to ball skills. He's going to make consistent contact. And without the shift now, I think we're going to see batting averages rise a bit just to begin with. So I could see Vargas putting around 270 or so.
Yeah, and keep in mind that the power is not necessarily expected for him. Like it's kind of like a 15-ish home run guy. So that's the reason I ask. If it's 255 and like 13 home runs, that's going to feel underwhelming. But if it's 275 and 15 home runs and a 360 on base percentage, I think that's where you start to get some of the excitement there. One of the guys we mentioned is reaction number 3, and that's Will Smith. Will Smith is due for a career year. This is a guy who has had they joked on the broadcast. This is his 5th season in the majors, which is kind of crazy. 2021, he had a 4.6 wins above replacement season, 3.9 last year. We're talking about a guy who's had some big numbers offensively. 860 OPS in 2021, 980 in 2020. Obviously, that was a shortened year. Do you think Will Smith? I mean, we're 3 games in because he wasn't allowed to play in the Clayton Kershaw start. Had to get Austin Barnes in there. Couldn't take JD Martinez out of the DH spot. But Will Smith, 5 for 11, a home run, a double, 5 RBIs with as many strikeouts, 2 as he had walks. Buying or selling Will Smith due for a career year this year?
Are we counting 2020 as like a full year here? Because he was like a 160 weighted runs created plus guy that
The
year.
2020 numbers are stupid. So let's set those aside because we're talking about 37 games in 2020.
Okay, then I'll say yes, but he's been so impressive in his career already that even if he doesn't have a career year, like he's still going to be an elite player. He's right around a 130 weighted runs created plus for his year. Like as a catcher, that is elite. There's not too many people better than that. Maybe Real Muto and Adley might get there, but he's at the top of his class. So he doesn't need to have a career year, and he definitely can have a career year.
Yeah.
It's just hard to break what he's already been doing. But like his offensive numbers compare to Hall of Famers, and it's a small sample, but that's how good he is. I don't think a lot of people understand that. Like he's near the top of the offensive catchers when you're looking on a game for game basis.
Yeah, I think over the last 3, it's either 3 years or 4 years, he is the top offensive catcher in baseball. He just doesn't grade out as well, sort of all around against guys like JT Realmuto, which is the only reason he's not. I gotta put this one up there. THP said the janitor gonna clean out the doubters, so I like that one. We had not Daniel Starkin saying hang his mop in the rafters. I'm on board with that. Blake's getting a smile out of it. He won't admit it, but he's smiling it. So there you go.
People don't have to buy into the janitor just to get their comments on the screen and make Jeff happy.
It doesn't hurt though. It doesn't hurt is what I will say. Do you think hitting in the 3-hole changes things for him? Like, do you look at that like, oh, this is a reason that I'm buying more Will Smith stock or less Will Smith stock?
I don't think so. I think batting order is kind of an overrated thing most people care about.
Yeah.
A lot of studies show it doesn't really change offensive numbers too much. So I just don't put too much stock into it. But anytime you're hitting behind Mookie and Freeman, it can help your RBI total a bit. But at the end of the day, that's not really something I evaluate a player on. So for me, it doesn't change it. But for the national media and takes around the country, it might change things if he's a 100 RBI guy instead of an 80 RBI guy.
Yeah. Yeah. I always joke about the batting order thing. Like, oh, leadoff's a big deal. It's like, well, he's only leading off in 1 inning, and every other inning for the rest of the game is like, he might be second, he might be fifth. Obviously, the one thing that does change is who you come after. If Mookie Betts or Freddie Freeman is on base, which will probably happen a lot, that's going to change the pitch mix that Will Smith is going to see. You get a guy out of a stretch versus out of a windup, et cetera, et cetera. So now, versus batting 5th and having Justin Turner and Max Muncy hitting in front of you in years past, like I'm not sure there's a huge difference, but I do agree. The Matt Morenos of the world who like counting stats of RBIs and stuff like that will probably like Will Smith's numbers a little bit better. I got to get Moreno a little. I got to get a little jab in at the counting stats guy there, but I hope so. He's off to a great start. He's got to play more, right? Like we can't have game 3 of the season and arguably the hottest hitter on the team is on the bench. That can't happen, right?
That's the downside of having a really good offensive catcher. It makes it hard to sit them, but you also can't wear a catcher down. They need more rest than other positions. So you get the benefit of having a great offensive catcher, but you have to sit them more. So it's just kind of the thing you have to deal with. I don't blame Dave Roberts for giving him a day off, especially this early in the season. It's more important to have him healthy down the stretch and into the playoffs and make sure he's fresh for that.
There we go.
Yeah,
Moreno is joining us. RBI is a stat. That is true. So, Matt, thank you. It's just like a sampling in the water to see who is in here. And it's just like, it's the bait. We drop the bait in the water and Matt pops up. We love you, Matt. Thank you for being here. Thank you for joining us. Let's get to number 4. And this is, I mentioned having to wear an L on game number 3 already. I made a bold prediction that was a season-long prediction. And by game number 3, I looked like probably the biggest clown around. And that was prediction number 4. Trayce Thompson's 2022 may not have been a fluke. Blake, he hits 3 home runs in game 3. All of them exactly the same exit velocity. All of them absolute bombs in a 10-run victory for the Dodgers. Are you buying? So Trayce Thompson, let me give you a career rundown for this guy. He's a career 224 hitter. He had 0 major league at-bats in 2019, 0 major league at-bats in 2020. He had 28 major league at-bats in 2021. He was on the Padres and then cut. He was on the Tigers and then traded to the Dodgers. And then he posted a 900 OPS with the Dodgers last year. And it's like, well, this is the outlier. Is it possible that 2022 is actually a closer version of who Trayce Thompson on the Dodgers actually is than the entirety of the rest of his career?
Before I answer that, can we just talk about how crazy it was that he had 107.5 mile per hour exit velocity
Ridiculous.
on all 3 of his homers? Like, the chances of that have to be like slim to none. That blew my mind a bit. So, but to answer the question, I would say that's an overreaction. It kind of seems like Trayce Thompson is going to be a guy who's either going to strike out or hit a home run, and there's like nothing else that's going to happen in between. If that's what he is, he could be somewhat valuable, like Joey Gallo kind of a few years back.
Oh my gosh, here we go. Joey Gallo.
Gallo walked a little more, I think, but if that's the kind of profile he is, he could be a valuable player. Am I going to count on that? No, I don't think he's going to make consistent enough contact to keep homering like that, but he does hit the ball hard when he makes contact, so he's going to get his homers. It's just a question of how much is he going to K, and I don't really trust him to not.
This is what makes Blake so good. What he did is he just took Trayce Thompson and drew a squiggly line to Joey Gallo, who he loves, who the man loves and can't quit, and then said, so at that point, like, it's a valuable player if he's like Joey Gallo, and that's amazing.
Like prime Joey Gallo, like not
Gallo.
Dodger Joey Gallo, but he could be Dodger Joey Gallo if he's not going to homer. If he's just going to strike out, then he's not going to be a valuable player.
But you were a fan of Dodger Joey Gallo.
I do like Joey Gallo as a person and a player. I was hoping he could get back on track with the Dodgers, but it didn't happen.
Moreno just texted me and said, I knew Blake was going to name drop Joey Gallo. So there you go. I love it. Yeah, I mean, it's hilarious. My bold prediction, if you missed it a week ago, was that, like, are we positive that Trayce Thompson is still on the roster a few months from now? And then he hits 3 home runs, and it's like, well, that was a really dumb prediction, Jeff, because he might be the home run leader, like, for the next 3 weeks. Of course, today comes back to earth a little bit, 0 for 4 with 2 strikeouts, and that's kind of the Trayce Thompson experience. Part of the take on Trayce Thompson was they just have so many outfielders. Like, if Outman is going to perform as he has been performing, even today, he didn't get a hit, but he goes up 3 times and reaches base twice, has a home run in game 1. So if Outman is going to perform, if Peralta is going to perform, if they seem committed to having Jason Hayward on the roster, even if they maybe like Thompson a little bit more, it's an interesting one. So just to sort of land the plane on this one, like, I would say I'm still skeptical of Trayce Thompson, as much as it sounds stupid to say that after the guy has 3 home runs and all of them lasers and all of them bombs. Are you skeptical of Trayce Thompson? Like, if I gave you an OPS of like over or under 799, are you taking the over or the under?
I'm still skeptical. It's hard to say what I'd take on the over under that. Like, it really depends on how much contact he's going to make this year. If he's going to be able to at least consistently put the ball in play a few times a game, I think he'll be a solid player. I just don't really believe in him to be able to do that. He's definitely not going to do what he did last year. I think he was like a 150 weighted runs created plus
crazy
guy. Like, that was superstar levels. I would be very confident in saying we're not going to get that again. I'll say under on the OPS for now, but it wouldn't shock me if his slugging carries him a little above that.
Yeah, I mean, THP says lots of, this was the wrong one. There we go. He says, I mean, at worst, Thompson could be the glove guy. And here's the thing. They have the glove guys already. Like, James Outman could be the glove guy. Jason Hayward, it sure seems like they think could be the glove guy. Chris Taylor played a good left field today. So that's the thing, is they don't have a need for like he's the defensive replacement out in outfield, because what they need is offensive production from the outfield, not necessarily defense. They have lots of defense. So we'll see. We'll see how either of these takes age. So there we go. Matt in the comments, yesterday, Trace Thompson, 3 home runs, Dodgers on pace for 108 wins. Today, Dodgers are 500. Trace didn't have a hit. Life comes at you fast. I think that's a fair assessment of things. Last reaction here for you, Blake. Then we'll get to some questions from folks in the chat and then talk preview. This one's the negative one here. The Dodgers bullpen, which I predicted would be top 2 or 3 in the league in ERA. The reaction after this weekend is that the bullpen isn't a strength. It's a concern. If I had been asked to rank the Dodgers' top relievers coming into the season, I would have put Evan Phillips in his own tier. I would have had Alex Vesia and Yency Almonte in the second tier. And then I would have had a guy like Brusdar Graterol and Caleb Ferguson probably in the third tier. 2 of the 5 guys I just mentioned have made appearances and looked really, really bad for the Dodgers. That's Alex Vesia in the game that you were at on Friday, and Brusdar Graterol, as we discussed today. I'm curious, as the resident relievers are always a disaster and you shouldn't count on anything and never get your hopes up guy. Do you agree? Like, are you more concerned with the Dodgers bullpen now, or are you just like, relax? It's 1 appearance for Graterol. It's 1 appearance for Vesia. These guys are going to be fine.
Yeah, I would say it's an overreaction, and I do think they're going to be fine overall. I don't love Graterol's profile to begin with, and I've said that before. He doesn't get strikeouts, and he's a ground ball pitcher mostly. And without the shift, I think that's going to hurt him. Now, he can be an effective reliever. He can be fine in middle relief. I don't really like him in high leverage or setup roles as much. But I do think they still have a very talented bullpen. I don't trust relievers, like you said, no matter how talented they are. They're always causing problems and keeping people up. And so from that perspective, I think they have the talent to get it done. And I think they can be a very good bullpen. So I wouldn't be too concerned about them. They also have a lot of guys on the IL right now. And if you get a few of them back, that strengthens the bullpen even more.
Yeah.
Maybe Pepio could help fill that role if he comes back and isn't needed in a starting role. And then with Daniel Hudson coming back, he could end up taking over the closer role. You got Fireisen down the stretch, maybe. Trinan down the stretch, maybe. Alex Reyes somewhere in the midpoint of the season. So they just have a lot of really talented arms on the IL. And they still have talented arms in their bullpen, so I just wouldn't be too concerned about it yet.
I'm curious on Vesia. You were there. He goes 2/3 of an inning, 3 hits, 2 earned runs, gives up the 1 home run. It just, nothing was missing bats from Vesia. And on one hand, we've seen this before. It feels like he has 1 or 2 appearances like this, or goes through stretches where it feels like nothing can miss. And then he always seems to pop out of it. Like, I'm with you on Graterol. The failure to be able to swing and miss has always terrified me, and it should terrify you, I think, with relievers. And no matter how good his stuff looks, especially with the shift band, I think Graterol is the type of guy who's going to be hurt more by that than maybe the average person. Vesia was a guy that I was counting on, and I would have said he was probably the Dodgers' second best reliever that's healthy, as you pointed out. Lots of guys injured. I'm curious, you were there, like, Vesia, like, where are you at on Vesia?
I'm not concerned at all. Every reliever is going to have a bad game. Vesia's just happened early in the season. I would bounce. I think he's going to bounce back, and I would count on him to do that. So I'm just not concerned. It's one game. He made a bad pitch, and it got hit out. He made a few bad pitches, and they took advantage of it.
Yeah.
Sometimes he's going to make bad pitches, and the other team isn't going to take advantage of it, and that kind of tends to even out. Sometimes he's going to make great pitches, and the team's going to hit it out. It's just baseball. It happens. He's still a very good reliever, and I wouldn't be concerned about him too much.
I mean, that's where I'm at. Look, the guy had 104 appearances the last 2 seasons and had an ERA of 2.25 and an ERA of 2.15. Last season, 79 strikeouts and 54 1/3. I'm not throwing all of that away because of one bad outing from Alex Vesia, no matter how bad it was. Now, Graterol, as I've said, if you go back and actually look at Graterol's numbers, they're probably worse than you thought they were if you're a Graterol fan, because a lot of people see the stuff and they're like, this guy's amazing. And then you look and it's like a 3.5 ERA or whatever his ERA typically is, which is fine for a middle reliever. It's just not great for the guy that you throw in the 9th inning of a tied game, regardless of what point in the season. So I'm with you. I'm not worried about the Dodgers bullpen yet. I was bullish on them. Give me Hudson back. Give me some combination of Reyes, Fireisen, Treinen, all the other Jimmy Nelson, if you want to be real optimistic here. I think this group will be fine.
I do think the timing of it also matters. Like if Vesia had this game in July, like we just say, oh yeah, it happens, he's a reliever. But it was just second game of the year and it was all eyes kind of on it. So timing definitely affects our perception of how we see their seasons playing out.
Yeah, absolutely. We are going to get to some questions as Matt posts in the chat. If you have a question, start it with question all caps. It'll stick out, so we'll scroll through and be able to get to. We did this a week or so ago and weren't able to get through all of them. Had to scroll up and down, so it's a lot easier if you kind of just throw that at the beginning. One person asked, Yency did pitch. He threw 1 inning. I believe that was on Saturday, maybe, and it was a scoreless inning, I believe. No, it wouldn't have been Saturday because only Andre Jackson threw on Saturday. So it must have been Friday. I believe he had a scoreless inning in that one. Nope. Maybe it was Thursday. Anyways, there was an appearance from Yency Almonte. He has pitched so far. There it was. Yeah, it was in the 8-2 game on opening day. It was a scoreless inning for Yency Almonte. So let's get to some questions here. Throw them in the chat. Roger, are you concerned about Muncy's start? This was actually reaction number 6 that got scrapped when Gratterall blew it, and we're like, we got to talk about the bullpen more. First, let me pause Roger's question. Blake, do you prefer the Olympic rings or the platinum sombrero for a 5 strikeout game like Max Muncy had? Because we had never heard of the Olympic rings, and I was pro Olympic rings. Have you thought about this more since our playback?
I think Olympic rings is funny, but I prefer platinum sombrero just because it matches golden sombrero. So
okay, there you go. There are a couple questions here on Muncy. So Muncy, 5 strikeouts, game number 1. Game number 2, he comes out and absolutely, he had 4 balls put in play, all of them over 102 miles an hour exit velocity, even though he finished with just 1 hit in that game. He comes back Saturday, struggles once again, and then leaves that game with an injury. He goes 0 for 3 with 2 strikeouts in that one. So basically, he's got, what does that make him? 2 for 11, I believe, with 7 strikeouts, I think is where Max Muncy stands with some contact mixed in. So I was optimistic on Muncy. I'll let you start. Are you concerned about Muncy?
I'm still not concerned yet, mainly because in that second game, he was hitting the ball very hard. And he didn't get the results, but he was still putting the ball in play very consistently hard. I think he had a few that were over 100 and just were right at people. And that's just how baseball goes. He's probably going to end up getting some hits where they're 80 miles an hour and he gets a nice single out of it. But how he was able to make the contact gave me some hope. Facing a lefty and striking out twice, I mean, it's kind of what it is. He's a lefty hitter. They're usually tougher.
Yeah.
The first game was definitely a disaster, and I'm pretty sure he'd say the same. But I keep saying it, it's baseball, it happens.
Yeah.
He's a talented hitter. He showed he was still hitting the ball hard when he was making contact there. So I'm not too concerned yet. Maybe if we go another week or 2, some concern might start to creep in, but it gave me hope that he was hitting the ball hard.
Yeah, I think the concern for me is no walks. Muncy's a guy that no matter how bad it historically has gotten, he's been able to draw some walks. The fact that he has none and compared to 7 strikeouts is concerning to me. And then I think you just have to acknowledge this is a guy who hit 196 last season. So while he had a bunch of years before that where you kind of just were like, well, he'll figure it out. He'll snap out of it. He went a whole season last year and never really snapped out of it. So that's the part that's worrisome. I still believe the 4 102 mile an hour balls in play that came on in Friday's game was enough for me to say, I'm not panicking yet. The 5 strikeouts looked really bad. He continued to swing over the top of breaking balls tonight, but he was rifling balls. 4 over 102 miles an hour is more than most guys will have in like a 2-week stretch. So I'm going to give him some patience. I'm not panicking about Muncy yet to answer that question.
I do want to say last year he did break out of it. In the second half of the season, he was like a 125 weighted runs created plus guy. So he showed he can still be a very productive hitter. It's just if he's going to be a streaky hitter, maybe that's something that's new to him that we start to deal with. But he still has the power, and that's kind of his main carrying card.
Yeah, THP asked a similar question. How long of a leash does Muncy, he corrected himself, have before he gets phantom IL'd and Michael Busch gets a second base start? Also reports Busch is playing third in AAA. Alex Friedman, who we had on, he was the AAA announcer, which if you missed that interview, I'm biased. I would go back and check it out. He's really good, really interesting as a guy who covered all these rookies that are coming up every single day last season. So he had some great insight, but he actually was the one who tweeted out that they're going to try Michael Busch at a bunch of different positions throughout the season. They'll let him play there like 3 games in a row. So third base, first base were the 2 that were mentioned. We just kind of answered the Muncy piece, so I just wanted to acknowledge the Michael Busch piece. We'll see how Michael Busch does. If he continues to hit down there, I think they'll find a way for him to, I think he'll be the first guy up. They're not going to bring him up to play every 6th or 7th day or something like that. But if Muncy were to go on the injured list, he missed today's game, although it sounds like it's I don't want to say minor. I don't want to diminish what that must have felt like for him to get hit where it hurts the most. But he wasn't in the lineup today. But I tend to think that if Muncy or Freddie Freeman, those 2 guys were to go down, that Michael Busch would probably be the first guy up. Don't you think, Blake?
Yeah, probably. I think he should have made the team probably over Hayward to begin with, but Hayward, he's kind of just got put in that spot like right out of the gate that they were putting him on the team. Michael Busch is a really good hitter. I think it's good they're letting him see some time at other positions because that might be the way he breaks in. Is kind of like a Ben Zobrist type utility role that can mix around, especially if Taylor is going to platoon in the outfield. You do kind of need someone who can move around more. He can impact the team, so it's good that they're doing that. And I do think we should see him at some point this year.
Yeah. Michael wants to know, Blake, when will this team learn to win 1-run games? We haven't even gone to extras yet. I already know we're going to have a losing record there. Didn't the Dodgers have a winning record in extra innings last year?
I don't think so, but
Am I
don't
crazy
remember
about that?
for sure.
Okay. Well, you answer the first one. I'll see if I can do some research on the extra inning piece.
I'm not sure how to answer that too much. They just have to be better. It's like as simple as it is. The offense needs to start scoring more so they don't have to be in as many 1-run games, I guess. The pitching is going to give them a lot of opportunities to be in those games, but it's just going to be on the offense. Maybe starting Miguel Vargas every game to get on base and help out the offense a little more there instead of giving him a day off here. I mean,
yeah. I mean, look, it's like these are the types of things that just will even themselves out over the course of a season. If the Dodgers have a really good bullpen and they hit home runs, those that seem to be like the type of indicators that will help you win close games because bullpens will keep you in it and be able to shut teams down. So they'll be fine. They'll be fine would be my answer. Eric asked, we kind of addressed on this. What do you make of all the walks that Vargas is drawing? Do you think he's due to break out? You're a yes on the yes, due to break out, right?
Yeah, I've been on the Vargas hype train for a while now, so I really like his ability and all the skills he brings. I think the walks are extra encouraging. Maybe he kind of learned in spring training he doesn't need to swing to get on base when he wasn't allowed to swing and he was still just consistently walking.
Yeah.
It seems like pitchers are still just scared of him, and they have good reason to be scared. He's very good. So, yeah, Vargas, Rookie of the Year, let's say it.
There you go. Okay, James asks, since he's behind May, Stone, Miller, Pepio in the future rotation chain, is it time to look at Jackson as a pure relief guy? Seems like he has stuff that'll play and the makeup. Andre Jackson, team leader in saves, Blake. 1 save for Andre Jackson, 0 saves for everybody else.
Yeah, I do think he's a reliever long term. I think they've kind of felt that way for a while. With starting pitching prospects, you always want to give them every chance you can to let them start and prove they're a starter. And then usually when that doesn't work out or they get blocked by a bunch of other people, then you move them to the bullpen. Relievers tend to be less valuable than starters. Like even an average starter is better than most relievers. So you don't want to take guys away from that chance to start. But it seems like his role moving forward is definitely going to be long reliever, maybe a spot start here or there. But that's probably his future role.
Yeah, that was honestly one of the biggest pieces of insight I gained from getting the chance to talk to Alex Friedman was exactly that. I was like, hey, Andre Jackson makes the rotation. He was like not good in AAA last year. You were there. What happened? And one of the things he said was what was interesting is when they moved him to a long relief role, he actually pitched a lot better at the end of the season. He's like, look, some guys just like not having a routine and just kind of a different setup clicks for them. So I'm not saying that's Andre Jackson. He had a really good outing. The changeup looks very good. So could he be the next sort of Mitch White, Ross Stripling type? It seems like it. Even if his ceiling is lower than a Michael Grove or a Ryan Pepio in that type of role, I do think he's going to land kind of more in that versatile swing reliever, long reliever type, which is kind of a big thing that baseball teams like to have nowadays. So good news for Andre Jackson, but if he keeps pitching like he did the other day, he's going to be in good shape. Casey asks, how do you justify having a shortstop that has to be pinch hit for in the ninth? We desperately need a star shortstop. Disappointing after how Swanson and Bogarts have started. Rough. Obviously, Rojas is there for his defense, and it's worth pointing out was not the first choice shortstop Rojas is starting because their starter, Gavin Lux, tore his ACL. So that said, Rojas, I believe I tweeted at one point before being pinch hit for, is 0 for his last 10. 4 of those 10 at-bats came with runners in scoring position. So if you were skeptical about Miguel Rojas, like me, this hasn't been the offensive start that you were hoping for.
Yeah, it's definitely not ideal, but it's the situation they were dealt with.
Yeah.
I mean, we all know Lux was supposed to start, and Rojas got pushed into a starting role. He was supposed to be a backup, and if he was a backup, I think we'd feel differently about him. But once Lux got hurt, there wasn't a whole lot they could do. It's easy to go say trade for Willie Adames or Tim Anderson or someone else, but it takes 2 teams to trade, and generally teams don't want to trade away this early in the season when they still have some hope of making the playoffs, or they could surprise or something happens. So it's very tough to trade. Andrew Friedman was saying at spring training when he was doing a media interview, like, we want to add, we're going to look to add. We don't feel great about our position depth right now, but we're going to look. But it is very hard to trade during spring training. And then in free agency, there's not a whole lot there either. Like, you're going to sign Jose Iglesias, and he's going to provide you the exact same thing Miguel Rojas is doing, if not even worse. So it's just, they didn't really have any other options, and it is what it is. You can say they should have went back and signed someone. I think I've said before they should have kept Seager, but contracts just don't work out sometimes, and this is what they're dealing with now.
Yeah. Matt chiming in, Dodgers 6-9 in extra innings last season, 16-15 in one-run games. So there you go. To answer the question of when will they start to win one-run games, last year is when they will start to win run games. But over 500 last year. So there you go. Let's see if we got any more questions here. Yeah, there you go. As Matt points out, we'll answer off-topic questions. AJ, we had AJ on the other night, Blake, and we got into some food conversations, which are always positive, always encouraging here. And holy smokes, did he have a question or a food take? So Matt wants to know, Blake, have you eaten anything good at Dodger Stadium yet?
I did enjoy the deep fried cheesecake I tried out. I had to take one for the team to get us the picture and try that.
We appreciate it.
Yeah. Doing my best to contribute here. But yeah, that was pretty good. The potato taquitos were good. I wish there was a little more to them, but they were good. And I don't think I've had anything else there yet this year. So
Not Daniel Starkin. Does Blake hate Dodger dogs?
I think they're fine. Like, they are what they are. I only like to eat them occasionally if I go to a Dodger game. Like, I'm never going to crave a Dodger dog anywhere else. It's just, they are what they are.
I had a hot dog tonight, Costco hot dog. My goodness, Costco hot dogs are so freaking good, and they're $1.50. That's like a plus. I just think the hot dog itself is great. I'd pay $4 for that hot dog. Just a good hot dog. Anna wants to know, how much did you love Steven Nelson's performance? Anna playing straight at me. I love Steven Nelson as a person. He's really freaking good, and I know I'm biased there, so I'm willing to like somebody tell me I'm wrong, but I loved it. I think he was great. I loved his bit when he came in with Joe and Oral the first night and was joking about bringing snacks. I loved the story with Oral Hershiser and the baseball. I genuinely think that's the type of person he is. I think he's just a fun, good person. So I've been super happy with Steven Nelson as the second guy for the Dodgers.
Yeah, the Dodgers have been blessed with great broadcasters for basically their entire history. So I think Steven Nelson is next in line. I'm not going to compare him to Joe Davis and Vince Scully or anyone else, but I think he's done a good job and he's mixed in well.
Yeah, there you go. Okay, what will be with Chris Taylor? Let's get to the last one here, and then we'll talk some games coming up. Made a nice catch in left field today. He's got that going for him. Had a couple home runs in the Freeway Series.
I mean, I've been saying I think he needs to get his swing mechanics down, and I'm not totally giving up on him. I'm not going to change that because of the 2 games he's played or whatever it's been. I mean, his role is going to be a platoon player, and if that's what he is, like, so be it. Hopefully he does start to hit lefties. If he doesn't, then that's going to be something they have to address, but I think it's too early to make any huge claims about him just yet.
0 for 7, 3 strikeouts. Does have a sacrifice fly on the season so far for Chris Taylor. And like I said, nice catch out in left field today, I believe. All right, let's get to some games coming up, Blake, just as we look ahead. We have a pair of games against Colorado this week, and then we've got 4 more with Arizona in the desert. I would say the headline here is Michael Grove starting for the Dodgers on Monday night against Felter. We got Urias versus Marquez on Tuesday. And then in Arizona, it's a lot of repeats of the same matchups we already saw. So you get Kelly versus May, Kershaw versus Bumgarner, Syndergaard versus Davies, and then Grove versus Ryan Nelson to close that one out. For me, again, Michael Grove is the headliner. I'd like to see what he's going to do. I'm more bullish on him than most people. I just think he's going to figure it out, put it together. I think he's a gamer. So I'm excited to see what we get from Michael Grove tomorrow. Anything else you're looking forward to between the Rockies and 4 more against the Diamondbacks?
It seems like Marquez is always the guy who gives him some trouble. So I'm looking forward to seeing if they can score some runs off him. And he hasn't been very good against anyone else really, but the Dodgers just always struggle with him. He has good stuff, and I've always kind of felt he could be a breakout pitcher if he got out of Coors, but he just hasn't put it together yet. So I'm looking forward to that one, I guess.
I'm looking forward to Madison Bumgarner pitching against the Dodgers again. Like that can't come soon enough. Can we just get that? When they showed the home run, the Trace Thompson home run, and then they just cut to his face, I tweeted it. The look on his face, when I said injected into my veins on Twitter, I was just like everything I wanted. That felt like it could be a profile picture. It's just a guy that I'm not I don't feel like I'm a mean person, but Bumgarner is just one of those guys I like to root against. And so to see him get knocked around by the Dodgers, just a beautiful thing. And to think like the Dodgers rumored to be in the market for Madison Bumgarner when he was a free agent, and holy smokes, did they dodge a bullet on that one?
Yeah, I don't understand that one. I didn't at the time, and maybe they thought they could fix him, but just doesn't seem like he has a whole lot left.
Yeah, we should mention, I believe it's the first place Rockies. So kudos to the first place Rockies coming in.
They lost 2 to the Padres, so I think
is it 2-2?
Everyone's tied except the Giants are 1-3.
Okay, there you go. I couldn't remember if they had taken 2 out of 3 or if it was 2 out of 4. So good correction on that one. So still the first place Rockies, just tied for first place coming into town. All right. Well, I think that'll do it for our show tonight. Again, thank you to all the folks joining us on YouTube, joining us on Twitter. Let me throw a couple announcements at you. The first one is we will be here every Sunday night at 9 p.m. So we hope you can join us. We might be able to do a little bit earlier next week. I know it's Easter Sunday, but we might be able to do it a little bit earlier than 9 o'clock, but typically it will be 9 o'clock on Sunday night live shows. If you can't make it, we know somebody was commenting, hey, this is brutal for East Coast folks. We know, we apologize. We're going to try and move that earlier and earlier as the season goes on. Once we get into the summer, it'll be a little bit easier. So 9 o'clock on Sunday nights. On Tuesdays and Friday nights, we will be doing 2 things. We will be on playback for a live watch party. If you haven't done playback yet, it's amazing. Go to playback.tv/DodgerBlue1958. You can join the room that we've got set up. You can actually do it now just in preparation for it, but you create an account. It takes 30 seconds. You sign in with your TV credentials, and all of us get to watch the game at the same time. You'll have folks like me or Blake or Scott or Matt or Daniel, folks like that on the screen, kind of doing a podcast chat as if we were all in a room watching it together. It's a blast. If you haven't done it yet, check us out Tuesdays and Friday nights. Every Tuesday and Friday, we will be there. And then we will be here on YouTube doing a live post-game show as well. So every Tuesday and Friday, playback.tv/DodgerBlue1958, followed by live post-game shows here as well. To answer not Daniel Starkin, will Daniel be on? He will eventually be on once the Lakers season ends. He will be on before then, but more and more as the season gets going. And then obviously we've also got content on the YouTube page constantly, DodgerBlue1958. So please subscribe, ring the notification bell, check out DodgerBlue.com, DodgerBlue1958 on social media. And of course, follow all the folks at Dodger Blue. You can follow at by Blake Williams on Twitter, me at Jeff Spiegel, at M Moreno 1015, at D Starkind, at Scott Gearman as well. So follow all of us. We greatly appreciate it. It's a lot of fun to enjoy Dodger games with all of you. So that's Blake. My name is Jeff. Again, thanks for joining us tonight or tomorrow if you're listening on podcast or watching on YouTube. Enjoy the rest of your day. And as always, go Dodgers.